don't give a fuck.
Are you sure?
I just don't give a fuck.
Presenting The Art of Not Giving a Fuck with Garrett John.
All right, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Art of NGF. This afternoon we have our great pleasure and honor to have with us Mr. Will Oldham of Bonnie Prince Billy and other musical and film outfits and presentations. So thanks very much for coming on, Will. I really appreciate this.
You're welcome, and it's morning here, so where you may be celebrating your afternoon, we here are celebrating a beautiful, warm winter morning.
Excellent. Very excellent. So you're in Kentucky, that's right?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I'm calling you from Croatia. So yeah, we have a little bit of time difference, but not a big deal. Beautiful afternoon here as well.
Oh, good.
So just wanted to dive right in. I didn't prepare too many questions because I like to have just a free-flowing experience with this. But I wanted to start off with what was it in you? When did you first know that you were going to be living a creative life, like living an unconventional life of music and film and all of that?
There was an unrealistic expectation of a non-traditional and/or creative life that lasted into my early 20s, and then I thought I was doing a 180 by applying all sorts of ideas of discipline and strong work ethic to making music. And then at a certain point, it seemed evident that what I was involved with was the life of an artist, which still sounds kind of it's almost humiliating, I guess, on some levels, just because I think it's because I worry sometimes about the preconceptions of other folks too much, and I know that our job in this line of work is to create spaces in which folks can get away from themselves and get away from certain aspects of their physical lives and certain aspects of their particular realities at times, and embrace and address aspects of their reality that rarely get the attention that it needs and deserves. And in order to do that, we hide a lot of the work, I guess. And so folks will, understandably, if you're doing it right, they will look at what you do and think that you're not doing anything.
Right.
And that, and then that makes it seem. Then I feel it's one place to put my inborn sense of guilt is into this feeling that other folks may look and see a carefree or work-free life. And then I guess there are many creatives who take that to an extreme and abuse themselves with the idea that they are appeasing or satisfying their audiences by doing what their audience wishes that the audience was doing, which is just letting everything go and not giving a shit.
Yeah. I recently watched the movie Blaze about Blaze Foley, the somewhat failed country musician, and the big takeaway for me was that Townes Van Zandt is also in the film, or a character playing Townes Van Zandt, and he's explaining about Blaze that in order for him to write the type of songs that he was writing, in order for him to create those, that he had to live this deep and dark life and go through all of these experiences. Otherwise, the songs would be hollow and meaningless. And so that he was paying this ultimate price of the way he lived in order to even create the way that he created. And that might be something that escapes people.
Well, because it's kind of faulty logic. It's that he, you know, everyone would have been better off if either of those two gentlemen were disabused of that line of conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
Go ahead.
I guess I don't. It's being able to come in and out. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I'm not a. I don't know. I don't care much for that kind of creator.
Mm-hmm.
The kind that. I guess it seems lame to me to pretend that self-destruction is a way to better work.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't promote any kind of longevity to the effort.
And it does the audience a complete disservice by celebrating the worst instincts in everybody.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Well, one quality of some of your music that I've noticed is that even in the darkest places that it reaches, it does seem to offer a resolution or move that darkness into a light or a more clear space of understanding, at least at the end of the song or toward the through the completion of the song. I'm never left with a sense of being dropped into the darkness with no resolution. Is that something you've done somewhat deliberately?
I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah. The music's goal is to take something complicated and confusing and frightening and potentially destructive and flip it around. Because it's already there and it's already doing its dark work. So when we insert ourselves, it seems like the purpose of inserting ourselves is to kind of exorcise that, exorcise that, or vaccinate ourselves as often as possible, as often as necessary, against such forces.
Yeah. A song that comes to mind is "You Want That Picture," which is something that it's like the deep, dark despair of a breakup, and somehow resolves in the chorus into the realization of the goodness of life and that everything will be okay. Maybe that's one of my favorite examples. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything will be fine. I guess there's no. It seems it's impatient and juvenile to try to bring your own end, because that end is going to come regardless. So we might as well, I don't know, just get something out of every bit of time between now and the inevitable end.
Yeah. How much of your own?
And if you don't need to give it to yourself, you can give it to somebody else. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. How much of your own? I guess this might be hard to answer, but how much of your own life experiences are put into or expressed in the music and the lyrics?
It's a good question. Yeah, even if I'm writing about somebody else, I'm still only able to draw on my own perception of the world. So everything is rife with my particular point of view, although it's a constant part of the work to try to expand horizons and establish perspectives and part of the joy of the work is knowing that if I can find my way to another perspective, then then that can be a reward, just because then I'll be able to see my own experiences in a new light.
So when you set out to do like an album of a tribute album of covers, like the Merle Haggard, or I guess there was quite a few in the last few years. When you set out to do that, how much, what kind of work goes into that in terms of understanding the songs and then being able to present them in your own way?
Yeah, it begins with a recognition of a relationship to somehow there's an intersection between my way of thinking and working and, say, what I imagine, or there's an intersection between how Merle approaches music and how I approach music, and music meaning everything, meaning relationship to other musicians, but also to lyrics and the purposes of a variety of songs. And it's knowing that he's got a way about him that is still endlessly fascinating to me, and I'm not sure how many people hear the same elements in his music, and so just spending a lot of time with his music, trying to find, well, what am I potentially an adequate diplomat or an adequate ambassador from the world of Merle Haggard to everybody else's world, even folks who may have an appreciation of him, but that appreciation might be limited to, say, certain hit songs, hit singles, or one or two records, and not maybe having gotten the opportunity to see the vastness of and the depth of how he approaches his craft.
Yeah, it certainly opened me up to a lot more depth about Merle Haggard that I hadn't gotten from the mainstream presentation, that's for sure.
It's cool. You pronounce it Haggard, which is like how David Allan Coe kind of pronounces him in his song "You Never Even Called Me by My Name." So you tell me I look like Merle Haggard, or I would normally say Haggard, but I like Haggard.
Might be in my Minnesota accent coming through.
Yeah, probably. Do you find a kinship between Minnesotan states of mind or Minnesotan landscapes and Croatian states of mind and Croatian landscapes, or is it completely foreign?
I do, actually. It's fascinating because this is the first time I've really felt at home in my life. I'm 42 now, and arriving here, I live in a town called Osijek, which is in northeastern Croatia. It's landlocked, not on the coast, and it's wine country and sort of flat or rolling hills, so it's like Minnesota in that regard, and a lot of forests and wetlands, which means a lot of mosquitoes, also like Minnesota. And some of the attitudes are similar as well, in the love for nature and the friendliness of the people and openness. Yeah, there are a lot of similarities, and like I said, it's the first time I felt really at home in my life up to now, since traveling forever and going a lot of different places. And when I arrived here, to the amazement of the locals, but this is a place that really feels like home. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you establish yourself in it? Like, are you in a house?
I have an apartment right now. It was the easiest thing to get, but I'm looking at land along the Danube River, actually, in this area. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's nice. The apartment has a nice west-facing view over the city, so I can see everything and see the sunset each day. Very, very nice.
Very nice.
Yeah. So I watched a short film. I actually showed this to people at some workshops that I put on, but the film Tripping with Cave. I guess that's quite a few years ago now.
Yeah.
I found it really fascinating, and that there was sort of a depiction of someone who was struggling with anxiety in the situation, which I guess you addressed, and so did he in the film. But so Cave seemed to be struggling with anxiety throughout the experience. Although I know we only get to see a tiny, half an hour of what must have been a full day.
Yeah.
And then you seem to be carefree for the most part, running around and having a good time. What was that experience like for you? I mean, what is it that we didn't see in the short 30 minutes of the film?
Well, I don't know if you have familiarity with Kavi's work, but his work in general is, there's a lot of, I guess it's attempting to exploit the vulnerability of others. And that didn't seem, and I knew that even at the time, that it just didn't seem like something that I felt was necessary to have my vulnerabilities exploited on camera. And so, yeah, it was just, on some level, it was a struggle to stay. I guess I built sort of an armor of joy, and in order to keep, because he, Kaveh has a lot. Yeah, he has a lot of darkness to him, and he likes to bring people down, and then capture it on camera in hopes that will further his narrative. And I like Kaveh very much, but that is just how he rolls. He's not about identifying and showing the strengths of anybody, or really the good side of anything. He's all about kind of showing the dark side. It's almost like, he would rather show you the back side of a billboard rather than the front side of a billboard.
Mm.
And you have to point out, like, well, there is another side to this billboard, Kaveh. Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely.
Or if he took a picture of it, if he took a portrait of his grandmother, he might be like, "Here's his grandmother." You say, like, "Well, that looks like a butthole," and he's like, "Yeah, it's my grandmother's butthole." And it's like, oh, well, that's how he chooses to depict his grandmother.
Right.
But I'd rather see his grandmother's elbow, or her left breast, or her right eye.
Yeah. So you went into it kind of armed with that knowledge ahead of time.
A little bit, yeah. Just knowing that his goal was to use intoxicants, psychedelics, to disarm his subject, and to be disarmed himself. And and if he didn't have cameras, I would go for it with him. But knowing that he had cameras, I thought that I had a completely different job in the film that he was hoping that I would have.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I really enjoyed the deflection of his attempts. I thought that brought out a lot of. There was a lot of contrast between your attitude and his that at least served the people I've showed the film to understand themselves on a deeper level, and where they're tripping themselves into their own darkness without seeing the invitation into something that might be a little easier or more fun when it's staring them in the face.
Yeah, and again, I don't know, if you watch more of his work, he I think I remember seeing. Yeah, he doesn't go out of his way to be kind to the people he represents in his films. I know that not that somebody needs to go out of their way to be kind, but I guess I'm saying that euphemistically.
Hmm. Right.
He seems to go out of his way to kind of skirt actual active cruelty.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
His subjects and characters.
Yeah. Well, he came off as being extremely anxiety-ridden just from the first moment at the airport in the film, and then it carried on throughout. And I know they had a little bit of a discussion about it, and his girlfriend was calling him out on it by the end of the film. I was pleased that he actually left that footage in there.
Yeah. No, he likes being criticized and documenting the criticism.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
To a certain extent. I mean, then the first time that I'm aware that he did a feature in which people don't play themselves, I think was his film I'm a Sex Addict. And in that he sort of, he gives the other character, he takes all power away from the other characters by casting actors as those characters, even though they're meant to represent real people in his life, and he plays himself. So he takes all agency away from everybody in his story about being a sex addict, maybe because sex addiction is something that the movie is, pretends to be a film of brutal honesty, except, like I say, it's the first and one of the only films of his where he puts all the words into his characters' mouths. So you have to question how brutal or honest he's actually getting with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I read in.
But it's a fun movie. The Tripping with Callie is a fun movie. He was hoping to make He was hoping to pitch it as a pilot and get HBO or somebody to pick it up and make a series so he could trip with all sorts of people, but nobody bought.
Yeah. And I wondered if he felt a little bit different about it after the first experience too.
I don't know that he did. I mean, there were certain things that absolutely worked in terms of entertainment and visuals that worked in his favor. For example, that I jumped onto a hornet's nest.
Right.
I think that got him excited. That the potential for any sort of misadventure happening. But again, I think his real goal was to get somebody else interested in the work, and I guess it didn't. At least nobody with money.
Yeah, I think and that was coming out at the tail end of the Fishing with John stuff, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. That's exactly. I mean, that's very, very. That's his. Kavi said that's where he got the idea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fishing with John was a lot of fun. Which I think that only went for 6 episodes as well. Maybe it went for more, but that's
Yeah.
So I read somewhere that you, I think this was in the interviews book, that you wished early on that albums were organized and presented in the music store by album title rather than by band name. Is that still a way that you create when you create an album? Like it's supposed to stand alone as a unique creation, like uninfluenced by the knowledge of the band name?
Well, not necessarily uninfluenced by the knowledge of the band name, but that it is, that its primary value is in what it is in and of itself, rather than in a lineage of output from a particular named artist. There's so many people involved with making a record, with most records, and so it isn't quite accurate or fair to call, to credit an artist with the content of a record all the time.
Mm-hmm.
we oftentimes might say that, you know, something is a record by whoever, Mariah Carey, and she might be a dominant, if not the dominant force behind it, but there may be other creatives involved with it who you might be able to identify as kind of owning the record and saying, well, this is part of this person's record. This person's work output.
Mm-hmm.
Record producers or songwriters or singers or players or people that just have dominant personalities that may completely shape a record. And then I guess I like to think that a record, I think of a record as having a lyrical content, which is, you know, kind of a funny concept because I don't know that a lot of music that we hear is, I think there's a lot of folks that just write lyrics because they have to have lyrics in their songs. So the record may or may not be about something, or you know, there's so many records where it'll come out and the artist is interviewed and they say, you know, yeah, a lot of changes going on in my life. You know, I just had a big breakup. It's just like blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's like they feel, you know, they feel. I guess it makes the artist, who is the face of the record, feel compelled to either create or imagine a narrative to associate with the record. Where I feel like I like the story of the record to begin when you start listening to it, and when it's over, more or less, you know, it continues to resonate in your mind and in your soul, but that it isn't about finding out where participants were prior to or during even the making of the record, but it's the whole story is inside of the record itself. And in order to doing that means that you don't say, oh, this is a Rolling Stones record, or this is a record by The Fall. You say, this is this particular record, and the rest of these things may have nothing to do with this whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. So when you're creating one of the cover albums, is this, do you organize that in a way that tells a complete story, you know, from beginning to end with each of the songs, the same way you might when you're doing your own compositions?
Yeah, I think so. And it isn't necessarily linear.
Sure.
Because when you listen to a record, hopefully and most likely you're going to listen to the record more than once, and therefore it's going to begin right away to exist in your mind in a non-linear fashion, because the echoes of the end of the record will come in to the beginning or affect your memory. Or, you know, there's the filmmaker Harmony Korine has been making movies that are, I think he calls it maybe liquid cinema, which is just the idea being that a specific scene doesn't even necessarily progress from beginning to end. It may bounce back and forth in time at any given scene. And so it's more, trying to build a cohesive experience that isn't necessarily beginning, middle, and end narrative, but it's totally a coherent and cohesive experience that people are aware of once they're engaged in it and involved with it. They know they're in there. They know they're in either the song or the full record. And making the covers records, because I've only made these, whatever they are, covers or tribute records with music that I'm pretty intimately aware of. And oftentimes, there's, some of these records, the Merle record, the Susanna record, the Mekons record I may be more intimately aware and involved with those records than some of the records in which I am responsible for creating, for writing the songs in another record. Just because, because I'm also, you can open yourself. You can be more vulnerable with somebody else's song. It just comes in and finds a home in your heart, and your own song. You're sort of working to construct that home or to build that nest in your heart, and to make the song fit. Whereas these other songs, they found their way to you, and you can't help your relationship to them. They're just, it's like they were born for your experience, or you were born to hear these songs. So on some level, there can be a depth of understanding with somebody else's music, somebody else's songs, that one could never really have with one's own.
Yeah, wow, that's very interesting. There's what you said about the albums being nonlinear, and I think that's closer to the truth about how we experience our lives. There's events that occur in a linear time frame, but that the meaning and importance of those can arise much later, or we can. I mean, there's so many dimensions to the experience of being alive.
Yeah, it's for example, once you, especially as you get older, but say you're driving down the street and somebody has a bigger car than your car, and they hit your car, and it's fairly significant. The impact is fairly significant. It's loud, it's jarring. You know that right there, your brain, based on your awareness of life, knows that, this is a lot of things right now. Like, I need to replay what led up to this happening, and this is going to affect my body in certain ways that I may need to do physical therapy, or I may have aches and pains, or, this is a moment that is going to affect the rest of my life. So right when it happens, you're 10 seconds into the experience, and this is not just an event that happened right now. Things led up to it, and it's going to have repercussions and aftershocks for years to come, maybe for the rest of my life. But you know it right then, in 10 seconds. Or, if you meet a certain person, you may, meet them and think nothing, and you don't know until 10 years later. I remember that moment when that person walked into the post office and I was standing in line. I didn't know that I was going to marry that person, or I didn't know that that person was going to ultimately, break into my house and rob me, or I didn't know, that person would have a child that would become my employee, and, all these things. And then, and you realize that none of it is that, linearity isn't a very helpful thing oftentimes. It's just a way of organizing things, but the after effects of any given moment or any given incident will continue to just come in and out and in, I don't believe random, but seemingly random ways.
Yeah, well, I mean, my experience of much of your music is influenced also by the places and times in which I was listening to it, or in which I would remember a song and then want to hear it. So now there's songs that have, so You Want That Picture is associated with driving around in Andorra in the mountains and hearing the music. And then other songs were associated with other vistas and viewpoints and places and people and experiences. And they start to grow over time in meaning and in the way I respond to them.
And that kind of awareness that you're describing is, it's great to kind of own that awareness and realize how and when you can still be open to music doing things unexpectedly, but you also know now that you can bring music in or take music away from certain experiences that you have, because you understand that if you listen to a particular song, you can either make a connection to a past incidents of your life, or that you're playing something for somebody else because it opens something up in you, and you want that openness when you have the experience with somebody else. The most blatant example of that is, just like the sort of seedy, like dude picking up a girl and putting on mood music. But, you can do that by putting on something that is essentially mood music, but it's more than that. It's music that helps you understand rebirth, or helps you understand conflict, or helps you understand levity, and you can bring it in at times when you'd like it to play its part.
Right. Yeah. I have a Bluetooth speaker at the house, and I like to put on exit music when I'm going to leave with friends, so that we
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
we leave with a certain attitude. Yeah.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
So there's one song that comes to mind, and I really love it, but I don't know if I understand it completely, or if that's even possible. But the song "Come In," is there a story behind that that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, that's a song. There are some songs where I'll dig in and actually have a certain story in mind that I don't feel it's not crucial for every element of the story to be in the song. It's just what the story that I use to get the song made. And that's, that song, there's a couple of songs that I had in mind that I liked the intention, or the apparent intention of. And one is a Johnny Cash song called "Come In Stranger," and then one is a Leonard Cohen song, "Sisters of Mercy." So in both cases, it's somebody addressing someone who is in a position to be welcomed in and potentially tended to. And then the relationship with those two songs ends, and the story that I wanted to tell was about this old kind of a mythological or folkloric character named Johnny Faa, F-A-A, who was a gypsy, and maybe some identify. I think there's in gypsy communities that I'm aware of, at least in olden times, into the 1970s and 80s here in the United States, someone might be called a king. So they are some sort of a leader of a gypsy community. And this guy, Johnny Faa, hundreds of years ago, either was or is this folkloric character from song, specifically in the gypsy traditions of the British Isles. And then people would say that Johnny Faa came from Egypt because there's like a detectable migration of folks who are culturally, if not ethnically, gypsies, who came, from northern India across the Gobi Desert and into where you are now, and down into Egypt and up into Spain, and eventually over to the British Isles. So this character, Johnny Faa, was oftentimes referred to as being from Egypt, and so in the song, it's a woman singing to Johnny Faa, and she's just kind of coming to terms with the idea that she has feelings for somebody who is itinerant, and she's trying to vocalize and feel okay about the fact that she's aware that she's kind of fucked herself by falling in love with someone who can't be there for her. That's the story.
Yeah, thank you. It's a beautiful song, and a friend and I had been listening to it a few times driving through Wales last September.
All right.
And he had asked.
There you go. Johnny Faa was probably, wandering those roads as well a couple hundred years ago.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, it's a wonderful song. I really enjoy that. So switching gears a little bit, are you still doing any acting? Is that still part of your life?
It is sometimes. We just spent the weekend making a music video, and that's kind of like acting on some levels. And then there's a couple of folks. There's a guy who's reached out about perhaps me coming to Morocco in the fall to play I think a real person who existed 100 years ago or so, who was a retired Scottish military officer who came under the employ of I think a sultan in Morocco around the turn of the last century. And then there's my friends who made Ghost Story and Pete's Dragon and Pioneer, which are films that I was involved with, are working on something else that they've expressed interest in my joining up. And so it's just a matter, I think, of them getting their financing or not. If they don't get their financing, we won't do it. And if they do get it, we will do it.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Are you going to be touring for the new Bonnie Prince Billy album?
The next set of shows that are scheduled are in March. They're over here, kind of in the eastern United States, and I'll tour with my dear friend and colleague Emmett Kelly, and we'll play mostly these new songs, although Emmett doesn't play on the record. And the purpose of the tour is to travel with the great Jonathan Richman. You know Jonathan Richman's music?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jonathan Richman will be traveling with his drummer Tommy Larkins, and he asked if we could play shows together. So we're going to play a couple weeks of shows together, and it'll be Emmett and I and Jonathan and Tommy, and so we'll be playing the new songs. I have never really associated tours with records, because a tour is its own thing, and a record is its own thing.
Sure.
And then, oftentimes when you tour near when a record came out, you may play a lot of those songs because they're fresh and they're exciting to explore. But I think of every tour as much touring a 20-year-old record as a 2-year-old record.
Mm-hmm.
And touring records yet to come.
Yeah. Do you use a sort of a standard set list on a series of shows? Or is it kind of determined night by night? We
usually, in maybe some rehearsals prior to, and then as the tour goes along, we build a song list that could be anywhere from 20 to 50 songs, and then everybody has access. Everybody in the ensemble. In this case, there's just going to be 2 of us. But if we were a 6-piece band, everybody would have access to that song list, and each night we sit down before the show and do a round robin where somebody picks the first song, then the next person picks the second song, and they can pick any song from the big list until we've come up with 17, 20 songs. So pretty much every single night is fairly different.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. The last time I saw you play was in Nevada City in California, and I've frequently been amazed by the places that you play, because I know you could have played a much larger spot in San Francisco or something, but it was beautiful to see it in such a like an old rustic. It's the Miners Foundry, I guess the place is called. Yeah, and that was with Fountain Son with Daniel Higgs.
And actually, that was the show. Jonathan Richman came to that show, and that's when we began talking to each other.
Oh wow!
Was it he came backstage. He wrote in advance. He said, "I'd like to come to the show. Is that okay?" And very polite. And he came backstage, and that began our communication. And since then, he's stayed with us when he plays in Kentucky. And so that was a great night for a variety of reasons. But that was a big night for us just because of the beginning of this communication with Jonathan.
Oh, that's very cool. I thought that was the first time I had ever heard Daniel Higgs, and then I realized I had seen Lungfish open for Fugazi like in 1995, and I had no idea.
Wow, where was that?
That was in Minneapolis at First Avenue.
Amazing.
Yeah, I didn't even
That would have
realize.
been quite a show.
Yeah, it was quite a show, and since it was Fugazi, it was $5, and there was like 5 bands playing. I don't know how they even paid for gas on that tour. Yeah,
They work it out. I mean, it's funny when you see a band like Fugazi and see the money that they charge and know that nobody is struggling, that I'm aware of, to make ends meet. You can understand how offensive and ridiculous it is, the prices that some people charge. And when you see where the money goes, it's kind of awful.
Yeah.
Because nobody needs to charge $50, much less 75 or 100 or 120 bucks, except to satisfy their greed.
Yeah. Yeah, and Fugazi, I believe, was like Chumbawamba, where they're paying all the staff and everyone who's helping to make the tour happen the same amount as they are receiving themselves. They had some ethic around that, you know.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
And do you remember the Lungfish set?
I do. It stood out to me. I really enjoyed all the opening acts. I didn't know who they were at the time. I was into a lot of Discord bands back then, but I didn't. I don't think I knew the depth of the lyrics at that point yet.
Right.
It's only exploring. I don't know if
He's a great performer.
Yeah, I don't know if I could have even understood the depth of the lyrics back then. It would have taken all the experiences I had up to now. When Fountain Sun started playing, and I had no idea who they were at that time, but I was instantly captured by what was going on, and I knew there was a deeper level of interactivity with the audience that that wasn't common to the shows I've been to. And and he was.
I think around now, Higgs is playing a couple of solo shows in the Northeast, like one I think in Brooklyn and one in Asbury Park, New Jersey. I wish I could, be there for those sets, just because seeing him play by himself is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, what did you get to spend a lot of time when you were doing that tour in California?
I met Daniel. I used to live in Baltimore in the early 2000s, and he's from Baltimore. And so we met there. We had mutual friends and played a number of shows together. He had a duo called Pupils with Asaph, the guitar player from Lungfish, and then Lungfish, and then have seen him many times as a solo performer. And also when he would come to Louisville, he would stay with us. And so we've spent a lot of time together. And I have his artwork, because he's a incredible visual artist.
Mm-hmm.
And I have his artwork, we see it every day. It's like right in our faces every day. And so Daniel Higgs is he's a pretty important person to me artistically and socially.
Yeah, there's something profound about his expression. It's like it takes me to a place where I am forced to understand certain things that he seems to be understanding. I don't know how better to put it, but it's a very rare experience to hear someone like that.
Yeah, it is. It's a very rare experience. Yeah.
I talked with him a little at that show, and I asked him what he was doing, and he said, well, we're doing something that's involving people who are present. And I knew he meant not only people who are there in the space, but people who are actually present to what's going on, that there was a deeper invitation there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He chooses his words very wisely.
Yeah, that was very cool. I appreciate that you had him on the tour. I don't know that I would have discovered him otherwise. It was really sweet to experience that.
I'm glad. Yeah. And then they've settled down. He and Fumi have settled down in. I think they're in Olympia right now.
Ah, okay. I wondered because some of the stuff I've seen him put out looked like it was in the northwestern forests and that area.
Yeah.
Very cool. Do you have any plans? Would you do an album with him?
Oh wow, that's a great question. Yeah, absolutely, I would. Yeah. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be wonderful.
And who knows? Like, if this film, one thing that's very interesting and compelling about this film possibility coming up is that it would be in the Pacific Northwest, and there would be, I think, the way it was explained to me, there would be a lot of days off, so we would have time to spend with our communities up there, because we have good friends in Anacortes, Washington, and Olympia, Washington, and Portland, Oregon. And so it would be really nice to get this, because that's so far away from where we are right now. We hardly ever get to see those friends.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful place to be up there too, and the people and the art
So
and the music.
beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me of the movie Old Joy. At those hot springs, I was on a road trip coming back from Minnesota, and I decided to go climbing in the Wallowa Mountains in northeastern Oregon on the way back, and then coming back into Portland. We lived in Eugene, Oregon at the time, and came back into Portland. And the night before going there, we decided to find those hot springs, and we drove around and drove around and drove around, and then all night on those forest roads and could not find it. And then the next day, there it was right in front of us, and found the hot springs and went. And then went into Portland, and I saw that Old Joy was showing that day at a theater there. So we said, oh, let's go see it. I had no idea what the movie was about. I just knew that you were in it, and went and saw it, and I was like, holy shit, this was what we just did last night. And,
Yeah.
and then
Exactly. Yeah.
and you guys were playing at it might have been Crystal Ballroom or Aladdin Theater, I don't remember, but you were playing that night, and it was sold out. And I asked the people, I said, can we get tickets for tonight? And they said, well, no, it's all sold out. And I said, come on, is there some way? We just got back into town, and there's no way we could have got tickets ahead of time. And they said, okay, they didn't take my name or anything. They said, just come back tonight and ask us. We'll see what happens. And so we came that night and cut in front of the line. They weren't letting anyone else in. And then the same guy was like, oh yeah, here's your tickets, and just gave us 2 tickets to get in.
Wow.
I have no idea how that happened or why that happened or anything. It was just like
That's pretty righteous.
some amazing coincidence. Yeah, it was really beautiful.
Yeah.
So we got to see the film and then see the music that night, and it was a wonderful time. I even met Fawn outside. She was smoking cigarettes outside that evening, so it was really sweet, really, really beautiful experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're almost running up against an hour, so I'll let you go soon. I wanted to ask, it looked like so you've had your first child recently, yeah?
Indeed.
And so how, that's got to be amazing. How has that influenced your creative life?
I guess it makes it, I guess because it shifts some of the urgency, I don't know, some of the urgency away from the songs themselves, so that they become less urgent in and of themselves, but more urgent in their relationship to her. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think so.
I guess so. Now when I'm building songs over the past couple of years now, their validity is heavily dependent upon her welfare, and that's kind of great, because they used to be fully dependent upon, to some extent, my welfare, to some extent, other people who are involved with the music, and then to a great extent, the welfare of strangers who I may or may not ever actually meet. And now it's shifted significantly, to the point where I almost think of much of the audience as being kind of participatory in caregiving for her, because the audience helps build the songs through my experiences with the audience and my hopes and expectations of communicating with people, and then trying to think like, well, what is, how can the song be something that just supports her now or in the future, lyrically and musically, mostly. So it's pretty different, and it's a nice turn of events.
That's a really cool.
Artistically.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating perspective. I do enjoy how there is a sense with your music that the audience and that I'm involved when I'm listening and when the shows are being played, and that it's not. There's something I was disappointed in when I was young after seeing the first 50 or so concerts I had gone to. That very few of them I felt like a participant. There was mostly like I was like being talked at in a way. Or when
absolutely.
Like when the songs are exactly as they're played on the album and there's no divergence from that. It seemed like something was just being repeated, and often I'd feel more comfortable just being at home listening to the album than I would be at the show.
100%. I agree with you 100%. I love, if I love a record, I love a record, and I don't need to see someone replay it. It won't make me love it more or less. It just will kind of waste my time, because at that point, I don't care to see in a live experience. I like to see, if you're there with creative artists, you want to see them being creative,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want to see them creating something in the room with you rather than repeating something in the room with you. You don't love a record because it's a repetition. You love it because it's a creation. And that's what I hope to see when I go see folks, is to see them making something in front of my very ears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something I very much appreciate when I witness it, which is rare. I don't go to many shows or buy a lot of music anymore. I do listen to a lot and discover a lot, but not much where I'm as enthusiastic as I am about your stuff and Higgs. Like Higgs puts out, he released his book with images, or when I get a CD of yours, there's an artistic presentation that's tangible there. That makes it worth seeking out.
There's a great cassette. I don't know what it's called, and you may have heard it, but it's a cassette of Higgs and a drummer percussionist named Michael Zarang that Emmett Kelly recorded. And again, I don't know what it's called. It's a beautiful cassette, musically and visually. And there's a lot of Higgs to discover as well, because he puts things out in all manner through all different kinds of printing presses and record labels and tape labels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful stuff. Are you still putting out tapes? I noticed I did get one, the Merle Haggard one I got on cassette.
Yeah, we are. And we'll put out a tape sometime soon. We put out a lot of tapes. Everything comes out on tape these days. Yeah.
Are the mixtapes?
But then we mixtapes, those are kind of cassette exclusive, I guess.
Yeah, those are very fun.
And there'll be another one of those that will make more copies, because we made a bunch of these mixtapes, and we made them using we sourced old 90-minute tapes, so we could only find a couple, like a couple hundred good quality tapes that we could afford realistically to buy, and so we just made, like I said, I think we made 20 copies of each of the tapes with all the artwork hand done on each one. But then we'll make one soon that will make a few hundred copies, counting on the fact that maybe there's a few hundred cassette listeners out there.
Really cool. Yeah, I only discovered them on Bandcamp. That was the only place that I had access to them, but I really enjoy those, and it definitely still has the tape hiss going on.
We recorded them off the tape and just made it the single track, so that it's so that somebody could, replicate somewhat the experience of listening to a tape.
Right, and you still have to fast forward or move it around to get to the song you want, if you wanted to hear a specific song, yeah.
Exactly.
I love that it was 2 long tracks, yeah, that each of them is like that. So
and some of it is we didn't necessarily own, like there's some songs on those mixtapes that we don't even own the copyright to, so we just figured rather than get into the red tape of appropriately crediting everything, we make it build in that it's not easily exploitable, nor is it heavily profitable, so that nobody would actually argue with us about our presentation of the music.
Ah, cool. And that was successful so far.
Thanks.
Very, very cool. So the last thing I want to bring up is something I do with folks as part of my work is helping them to do art or do music or make sounds or create things in the face of their anxiety or their inner critic. I guess number one, is that something that do you still deal with that at all with your own creation? Is there an inner critic or a voice that you have to sidestep to get stuff done?
There is, and it means that that's for the most part that's not a helpful voice, and so if I feel like that voice is inordinately loud or taking up too much space, then it's necessary to kind of redraw the boundaries of what you're trying to accomplish, so that. And even taking the mixtapes for example, just understanding. Well, I don't know how good or valid some of this is, but I don't want to. I don't know. Like sometimes I think with the new Bonnie Prince Billy record, I made a place. I worked on the songs for a long time because I didn't want to feel bad about them or to have that voice that you're talking about play a part at all in these songs. And so it was my assumption for the first 6 months, 9 months, at least, of these songs being worked on, being in some kind of existence. It was my assumption that they just wouldn't be released because I just thought, I don't want that voice to be a part of it. And I know that voice likes to have its say and likes to, get in the way of things. So I just kept working on them thinking, that they're just going to be their own thing. They're just going to live in our house. They're not going to live anywhere else. And then as I worked on them more and more and excluded all the space that voice might have infected or busted into, I created these almost impregnable pieces that didn't have any real weak, in my understanding at least, any real weak spots or chinks that could bring about their downfall or my downfall or both. So that was a good way of working. It's understanding how, from the very beginning, understanding that most likely it's impossible to make what you want to make and to present it in a way that is anywhere near satisfying. Like that's the beginning of any process, for me at least, is just understanding that the odds are stacked heavily, heavily, heavily against you and your work accomplishing what you would like to accomplish. And so going in with the idea that every step forward is a huge victory, and is not only a huge victory, but is kind of a good enough victory in and of itself to justify having put that much work into it. So it's not about trying to finish a song. It's just beginning a song is so huge. And you may never finish the song, but if you can begin a song And then if you can begin to rework or rewrite or reinterpret or bolster or adapt the song, everything is a little, it's a little victory. And if you know for a fact that your greatest dreams are based on realities of the past and most likely don't apply to the realities of the future in which those dreams would potentially have space. If you want to one day, if you imagine you're going to live in a house on a hill based on all of your ideas of what a house on a hill looks like, in the future, maybe that house, you'll never find that house or that hill because the ideal that you created came from the past. But you may find a space and realize one day, you're standing somewhere in an open field and you realize, this is the house on the hill that I've imagined. There's no house here and there's no hill here, but this is what I actually wanted. And the same, if you think like, I want to make a great record, and you think like, well, what does it mean to make a great record? Is there a record that you're thinking of how do you know what a great record is? And then you realize one day that something has happened and if you're open to it, you can say, this is what I was imagining making a great record would be like. But all I did was, walk for 9 miles in 12-degree weather. And I feel like this is what I would have wanted the reward I would have wanted for making a great record. And then you've got your great record. You don't have to worry about, trying to apply rules to something that can't apply. You can't even, if you're speaking about somebody like Blaze Foley and saying like, I would love to be responsible for writing a song like Blaze Foley. Blaze Foley lived in a different time and in a different place, so you can never write a song like Blaze Foley. And Blaze Foley was making songs and recording them in certain ways that would find their ways to audiences in absolutely completely different manners than music finds its way to an audience now. So you can't even compare you can't fulfill that dream. It's impossible. That is a dream of the past.
Mm-hmm.
But you may be able to create something and say, this is what I imagined Blaze Foley felt like when he finished writing If I Could Only Fly. And all I did was teach my dog, how to sit up and grab a hot dog out of my mouth. But I love this dog so much. There's nobody I would rather share this sense of accomplishment with than my dog Rufus. Because at the end of the day, you only have your own victories. And anybody else's concept of success or victory is not going to have applied. It's only what you value and what you can kind of take to your bed at night or to your grave in the end.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter at all what any external definitions of victory or success are if you're not able to feel it and experience it on your own terms. In your own life.
Yeah.
Well, this has been very cool, man. We're up over an hour, so I will let you go. But I really appreciate this. This has been a wonderful conversation. I hope it was as enjoyable for you as it is for me and for the folks that are going to listen.
Yeah, Garrett. Thank you very much. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Nice way to start the day.
Cool. Thank you. Yes, and I'll send you the link and everything when we get it posted.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you very much again, Will.
All right. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's a Macedonian documentary about a village. So it's either Macedonian or it could be potentially Croatian. It's from somewhere around there, and it's a documentary about people competing in a small village There's maybe goose fighting. There's a goose fighting competition, and then there's a competition for playing the greatest Turkish music cassettes. Does this sound familiar at all?
No, it sounds great though.
Yeah, I got to try to figure out what it's called. I had a copy of it at one point, but I lost it.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up. If I find out, I'll send it to you.
All right. Thanks, Garrett.
All right. Thank you very much, Will.